Hello and welcome. Infinite Conquest is almost here for September 2023, so I wanted to go over 10 different decks that you can play. So I think the general meta for this season is just being really efficient by putting a lot of power out for the energy. So you're going to see that with the top 3 decks in High Evo, Shuri, and Wave Move. So let's just go over what I think is probably the best one right now if the meta doesn't change too much, and maybe the deck list changes a bit in the week coming up. But I think this deck list, as it is right now, with just a few minor adjustments, or as it is going to do really well for Infinite. You're just putting out a lot of power with stuff like Hulk, Doom. There's a lot of power for their energy. Cyclops, Sunspot, Misty Knight, all double dipping. Nebula can often get pretty huge. It's just an overall really solid deck. You're also running Disruption for a lot of the popular decks. Destroy is always popular, especially the past couple seasons with the attention it got. So Armor, Disrupting, Destroy, as well as protecting from Shang. Cosmo does the same thing, but then disrupts way more than just Destroy decks. And then we have Wave, which is countering what seems to be everyone's favorite card with Loki. I see a lot of Loki in Conquest and on Ladder, and Wave does a really good job of countering it. Non-High Evo Wave decks, they can still steal your best stuff. They can still steal your Doom, but if they take your Hulk, your Hulk is going to be a lot bigger. Theirs will be a 512, yours will be like a 620. So this deck is just absolute monster right now. So for deck number 2, we have Shuri. Again, just putting a lot of power out there. You're able to double dip on your Shuri with Task, and your Shuri's pumping huge numbers. You can get a 20 power Typhoid, a almost 30 power Red Skull. It's just a lot. And then we're running the same disruption of Armor, but then we also have Enchantress, which is really good at countering the Devil Dinos of the world, the Zabus, the Darkhawk's kind of gone for the meta right now, but Enchantress isn't just there to, turn off our Mary and Red Skull, but also counter a lot of what the opponent's doing. Can even mess with like some of the less popular archetypes. Poor Hela can turn off the Invis Woman, MODOK the Hela. And then on top of that, we just got the Gravy of Cerebro 3, just struggles really hard against Red Skull if you aren't hitting it with Sauron or Zero. So then our last deck that is just really, really energy efficient is like the silky version of Wave. We have Nebula, Angela, Craven, Miles Morales, Doom are all putting a ton of power out there. And then I don't own Silk, but you could take out like Polaris for Silk, and Silk's again another really efficient card. And then we're running Wave to again disrupt Loki, as well as like Surfer decks, Cerebro decks, Sarah decks. And then our turn 6 is going to be either Arrow, Eliath, or Doom. Doom to just spread out the power, Eliath to like guarantee a lane, and then Arrow can also kind of guarantee a lane if you Wave on 5, Arrow on 6 to move your opponent's card. So deck number 4, another High Evo list. It's just really good into Loki, really good into a lot of things. It's a very similar version. It's a little bit worse, but it's essentially, this one relies off of, instead of just putting a ton of power everywhere, we want to focus on really winning 2 locations. So you want to storm and win 1 location, and then you're going to win the last one with a huge Hulk, Eliath. And if you can't storm a location, you also have Professor X to lock it down. So yeah, this is essentially the High Evo version of just locking down 2 different locations. Next up, a lot of the decks counter Loki, but Loki is still really good. There's just a lot of different options you can run. You can run Zabu in here. You can run Enchantress. You can run Shang. It's just very versatile. People don't really know what to expect. And then the great thing about Loki is that usually with a lot of the control decks, you end up running a little bit too many tech options. So like, maybe you're running Killmonger against a destroy deck. And for a whole conquest run, it's just really awkward to play Killmonger. And the great thing about Loki is you can get rid of your tech options and then instead get discounted cards from your opponent. So Loki's just, I think he's like really, really great for running tech options, really great for conquest. But I think a lot of stuff in the meta, especially high Evo Wave, is really good at countering him right now. But I think he's here to stay. Just maybe not as good as the top 3 decks. Deck number 5, we have, for those destroy enjoyers out there, we have Deadpool. This is just relying on, pumping up your Deadpool with Nova, Forge, Hulkbuster, making an absolutely huge Venom, and then copying it with Taskmaster, and then you have your 6 drops of, Death and Null. And the reason this deck is able to survive even with the armors, the Cosmos of the world, is it does a little bit better into Wave than Loki does, because you still have, you can drop a really huge Null on the last turn. So Deadpool is not like in the armors, not like in the Cosmos, sometimes not even like in the Waves, but Wave isn't as lethal against this deck as it is for, the Loki deck. Next up are All Reliable. This guy's been buffed and buffed recently. Recent Blade buffs, recent Lady Sif buffs. Discard is just a really, really solid option right now. I think the biggest problem with it is it's a little bit too linear. It's really easy to see what your opponent is doing. If you're playing discard, you've got a good hand, good location, snap early. And if you don't get a good hand, don't stay into it. They more or less know what you're going to do. So I think that's what's really holding discard back. It just doesn't really have answers. It's pretty linear. It's really, really good on ladder, but yeah, in Conquest, it's just a little bit too readable. So if you can try and snap early with this deck, if you're confident in your opening hand. Next up, we have yet another wave list. So Patriot Wave is a little bit worse than, with the Absorbing Man nerfs, but overall it's still really, really strong. So this deck wins by using the newly buffed Forge onto Brood or sometimes Sinister, and then you can also copy Brood with Absorbing Man. So you get those 4 attack little Zerglings, or the 5 attack little Zerglings with Forge, and then Iron Lad can also hit your Brood to get the 6 power little Zerglings, and then Patriot can buff those up. So this deck is all about the bread and butter of just Forge, Brood, Absorbing Man, Iron Lad, and then Wave for disruption. Mr. Sinister, Patriot are more or less backup plans. Cosmo is protection as well as disruption. I think this bottom row can really be changed out for whatever your preference is. I think you can run Storm Jug, Surfer, a bunch of different options, but against all the wave of the world right now, Doom, America, Iron Man, Legion are all really good options. Maybe drop Iron Man for Blue Marvel, or you could drop Legion for Ravonna. It's pretty good with Forge, Patriot, Iron Man. Yeah, overall this deck is just, it has the same game plan as the top 3 decks of putting out a ton of power and being really efficient, although this one's a little bit too linear, just a little bit weaker, just not able to put as much stats out, but you are able to run stuff like Legion. You have more room for stuff like Legion with your smaller bread and butter package, and Legion is just really good at shutting off locations or messing with your opponent. This deck, another reason why it's a little bit worse is the high Evo list recently dropped Magic, and Legion was really, really good at countering the high Evo decks that run magic, but now those decks just cut magic and they're fine. So it got a little bit worse. Next up we have Surfer. It's kind of underperforming right now. It's not doing as great as I'd like, but it's still a solid option. If you love Surfer, don't shy away from it. If you want the best deck possible, maybe choose one of the top 3 or a different option. So it's definitely not a bad deck. It's definitely good. It's just struggling a bit. So yeah, if you love Surfer, play it. If you're whatever about him, maybe play something else. And then for the 10 slot, this is a Galactus deck without Galactus because I don't own Galactus. But yeah, Galactus is on the rise, and of course, if Wave is popping up in the meta, you know who loves Wave? Galactus, and then Alioth essentially guarantees you win. We have alternate plans in Panthzola, which is really good at winning 2 lanes, similar to the high Evo Professor X build, but those 2 lane builds are struggling a bit more than just like the ones that spread a ton of power everywhere. So yeah, with this deck, your main plan is to like ramp with Electro and Wave, and then play that Galactus, play Doom Odin, Alioth can win you basically any lane. Yeah, it's just like has a lot of like options, and you can allow the opponent's Wave to do the work for you. So I think that's where this is really shining. It's just really taking advantage of the current meta. A lot of people trying to stop Loki, stop Surfer with Wave, and you're just able to really take advantage of that. Next up for an honorable mention, Ravonna was just released, and I don't think she's really strong enough yet. She might get buffed a little bit, or the meta might be shaken up. So I think Cerebro 3 is it's just an honorable mention. Pretty decent contender. I think there's just a lot of tech options this can run. But I think with like, Enchantress in the Shuri list affecting Cerebro, Mystique, and then just Legions. Legion's still like a really popular card, being able to shut off magic. I think this deck struggles a bit. Also, Professor X is just not as strong as like pure high Evo lists, and Jeff, especially in Cerebro 3, was really good at countering Professor X, but Professor X just isn't as common. So a lot of the decks people are running have ways to deal with this, and this deck is just struggling a lot right now. But I think Cerebro 3 naturally just runs a lot of counters. So I think if we're starting to see a little bit less Wave, or if Collector becomes a bit more prominent, we have Shadow King, Shadow King is also really good in Shuri. I think this deck is just on the cusp of being a top 10 list. It just needs, the meta to shift a little bit. A little less Wave, maybe a little more Shuri, a little less Wave. And then this deck is really strong. That's it for a top 10 list. Hopefully you guys do well in the Infinite Conquest runs. Good luck. Let me know what deck you're gonna run down below. Maybe it's one of these, maybe it's not, maybe it's one of these but a little bit different. Maybe it's a personal deck you've been running for a really long time. Good luck, have fun. Cheers.